Deer damage can happen overnight. One day your garden looks beautiful, and the next day it's been reduced to sticks. And that can be so frustrating and so disheartening. And I'm betting that something like that has happened to you, and that's why you're here watching this video. Back when my first year gardening in this space, I had this row of bush beans, and they were all coming up nicely. They were looking beautiful. I was getting really excited. And then literally overnight, some deer came through and munched them all down to sticks. There was almost nothing left, and I was absolutely devastated, not just because of the loss of my plant, but because I felt like there was nothing I could really do to stop the deer from coming in. As someone who rents my house, there's very few options that I have as far as fences, and as somebody who gardens organically, I have very few options as far as things I can spray on my garden as well. Plus, I don't really have all that much money, so I was looking at all of these options for keeping deer out of my garden and thinking, I don't think I can do any of this. And then one day I was driving down the road and I saw this cornfield that had pie pans strung up all the way around the border. And I thought, okay, if this farmer is doing that, maybe that's worth a try. Now, what's important to understand about deer is that their vision is different from ours. It's not very clear. They see pretty fuzzy. They have about 20/60 vision. So what you and I could see clearly at 60 feet, a deer has to be 20 feet away from to be able to see as clearly as we do. So if we combine that with the fact that they really can't see reds and oranges the way that we do, then these hay strings right here become pretty much invisible to them. At each corner of my garden, I have one of these aluminum poles. This is conduit for electrical wire. It's hollow on the inside, and it's pretty darn cheap to buy. So I've got a bunch of these that I had been using as tomato stakes, and this hay string that I've gotten off of bales of straw that I buy for mulching my garden. And this hay string is tied in between each of the poles. A conduit pole like this one is just a suggestion. T-post would work really well. Anything that you have really would work for this. It doesn't need to hold a lot of weight because you're just stringing up these strings and some pie pans on it. So it doesn't have to be particularly sturdy, which is why this cheap conduit tends to work really well. And on each side of the garden, I have these pie pans tied up, strung up along it. As you can see, these ones have been here for a while, so they are a little torn up. But it's important, I think, to have two together so that they will clatter every time that something runs into it. You'll also notice that I have two layers here. I think that this helps not only for making sure that you get the height right, so you don't have to guess so much about what height is a deer going to run into, but it also helps to make sure that the pie pans clatter a little more reliably when these get jostled. Additionally, the pie pans, you'll notice they're all the way down at the end right now. So every so often you do have to come back and kind of scooch them back towards the middle of your lines. But you can see even all the way down there, they're jostling, making a little bit of noise. And if you don't buy straw like I do to get these hay strings, which I do recommend, not just because of the color, but also because they are plastic and they will last outside in the sun much, much longer than any sort of twine that you might use. If you don't buy straw, then if you can find literally anybody that keeps animals where they would have to buy bales of hay or straw or anything like that, then I promise you they have like near unlimited number of these things laying around that they would be happy to offload onto you. Maybe you could talk to somebody at a farmer's market or talk to somebody at the feed store where people might be buying these sorts of bales of hay or straw. When talking about deer fences, I've seen people talk about being sure not to string anything up on them. so that because that would make the deer able to see them and therefore less likely to run into them in the first place. But I have found this method to be pretty darn successful. I had all of that damage my first year, and then like about a couple of weeks after that got this fence strung up, and I have not seen any damage in the years since in the section of garden that's protected by this kind of fence. And I know that it's not just that the deer aren't running through here, because another section of my garden that is not inside the fence has definitely been eaten by deer, and I see deer in the area all the time driving home at night. So the deer are definitely around, but they are avoiding my garden, and that is what I want. Now, is it possible that this method won't work for you? Yeah, absolutely. Some deer in some places are going to be way less skittish than in others, and I can't really just guarantee that this will work for you, but it is such a cheap thing to try that I would say that it's worth trying, especially because even if you are willing to spray stuff like deer repellents, you have to do that like every single week during the growing season. And this I just strung up once, and I make sure that the pie pans stay in place, and that's like just very minimal maintenance. Otherwise I don't have to worry about it, and then I don't have to worry about the deer at all. And if you can, I do recommend, in conjunction with this fence, trying to plant deer resistant plants around the borders of your garden, because if the deer like run into the fence and are noticing that stuff right there at the edge is not what they want to eat, then it seems like very likely that they're just not going to bother coming back to that area. Before you go, if you're new here, I do garden tours every single Wednesday, and the main idea behind that is specifically for new gardeners to be able to see the actual way that a garden works, week to week, the progress, the successes, the fails, and where I talk about sort of how I'm going through that problem-solving process of making decisions and solving diseases and pests and all of these things. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, make sure to check out the playlist up here. You can check out all the garden tours for this year and last year, and check back on Wednesday for the newest ones. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that this helped you out, and I hope that it helps keep the deer out of your garden too. Until next time, happy gardening.